The numbers, I think the numbers are starting to stabilize. If we can make a start. So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the webinar to share with participants what the activities and a little bit more detail, what we expect to happen in dress rehearsal 2. As a recap, dress rehearsal 1 was primarily focused on suppliers and also included the second round of submissions, which we were able to complete in around 98% of all the MPANs industry to actually get a plan for. So that was successful. Now we're moving on to the next phase, which is more fully focused on simulating what would it be like to actually have a migration and execution on those reports coming out from the platform, so people start to see what that would look like. I think the format, keep it fairly open. If anyone wants to ask any questions, you can just raise your hand and we can pick that up with you. And primarily, sensibly, we're focusing on 6 suppliers, making sure that firstly that we are creating a committed plan for them in the back end. So to save themselves the burden of doing that, and we're deriving that from their previously submitted plans. And then we will use that derived plan to then track plans versus actuals, that other participants can see what's actually happening during a executing migration. There is another feature which I will talk through in a moment, which is in order to allow this daily view of what's going on a daily level in migration, we've had to add the feature in for daily granularity committed plans to be provided by suppliers who are actually going to be migrating in this sprint cycle. I think I just covered this previously, but again, I'll just recap it so people understand that it's very much simulated outturn data that we're producing and simulated plans or the derived plans from the 6 suppliers. And we just need to make sure by the end of this process that all those 6 suppliers are able to see those schedules at the committed level, and they can see those plan versus actual outturn reports, and furthermore the other market participants can see the aggregated perspectives of that process. This is just a summary of what we spoke about before and the features. I think I can jump in across to Kestrel and have a look at that. Just checking on the call. Are there any questions in the chat or anything, Rowan?
No questions.
Okay. And this is the Kestrel platform. I'm logging into what is our development environment at the moment. So as you can see, this was not what you would normally see as the number of roles that we can access. This is just purely for our development purposes. And the first thing I'm going to log in as is our test supplier. Yeah, so I'll select the MPID role pair, and that's the supplier group MPID. And first things first, I'll scroll down to the bottom to the section that suppliers probably are more familiar with, which is the planning phase element. So what we're showing here is that the planning phase has completed. The suppliers downloaded the template, uploaded the valid plan, and nominated the plan. That nominated plan has now moved up and become a baseline schedule, because we've now consolidated that across all of the industry, and the baseline schedule is available to parties at various levels of application. The one here for the supplier that's logged in is specifically their view of their own schedule. And there's actually two parts to it. There's a committed schedule and a forecast schedule. And I keep repeating this, but there's always two parts to it. The committed one is because this supplier is active in the next sprint. And when I download it and I view that, well, I can see this one. I download that. I can see that it's a committed schedule. I'll open it up. And it's very much like the forecast schedules that were shared before with the industry. Let's open up. And it's made very clear that this is what the supplier ZZAA has identified in their last submission as their committed plan volume. And this is what the MCC has fed back to them as what we expect them, we will be checking their plan versus action against. And that's that approved submission volume in column P here, based on approved submission volume. So for given, so I'm just going to look this through just for the avoidance of doubt. Within Eastern, ZZAA on day number 13 in this particular paradigm, which is the 11th of, the 3rd of November, during the industry ramp-up period, they have committed to submitting we baselined 1,165 MPANs to be migrated, and they actually said they wanted to do that. We've leveled it at that, so there's obviously no change between the two. So hopefully that's clear. One of the things I wanted to show you, just to bring us into life a little bit, is in order for that to happen, this is what the new or the upgraded supplier submission template looks like with the daily granularity on it. So this is the old weekly granularity one. So we can see that we've got the this is the combined one. So what we can see is there's a key difference here. We've now got a day num and day date in it. And that clearly indicates that this is daily granularity for this one, because there's no weekend. And if I scroll across, the supplier can see now this is committed volume, and this is at daily granularity. And there's that 1,165 that we saw in the baseline plan at the daily committed level coming through. And if I scroll down further in the plan, because this is effectively a combined plan that has both weekly and daily granularity in it, and we can see at the end of sprint 0, which it is in here, this is the sprint 0. If I just use the top row to make it a little bit easier. Oops. Excel.playing ball. So this column I is the sprint identifier. And what we can see clearly here is that the end of sprint 0, we've switched over to weekly granularity because this supplier has expressed preference that they only really want to give us that degree of detail for the sprint execution period that they're first on the pitch for. And then that would for the next planning phase, that would then be sprint 1 that they will begin this daily granularity for. And equally, you can see there's slight overlap with their core migration window. Just checking there's no questions. Just raise a hand.
There was Dom asked, will suppliers who've opted into daily granularity be able to submit their daily plans for dress rehearsal too?
Yeah, so we've also got that feature. So I think a few suppliers have elected for a daily only plan, and they will see a daily only plan, and they'll be able to use that as well. And the full validation feature set is available for those suppliers as well. Okay. So that's how that looks for the committed plan. Go back to the combined plan.
We've got a hand up, Alf.
Yeah, sure. Hi, Alex.
Hi, Alf. Right. So the difference between the committed plan versus the other one that we put up there. So that'll only be if, let's say, I put a plan in there that whatever response we've had back from the MCC via Kestrel, if those numbers are any different, or will they in reality be a carbon copy of each other?
So within the framework, we've reserved the right to level suppliers what their plans are, because there are potential scenarios where we could see contention, because we need to protect the central services threshold as well as ODS thresholds. Now, what we've seen so far in terms of the overall submission volumes is there's no requirement for us to apply that leveling. However, if there is, if something happens and there's a loss of time and we're keeping the fixed M15 deadline, we could end up compressing that, and the chances of contention would increase. So, not at the moment, unless drastically things change and what suppliers' intention change dramatically. Can I answer your question, Alex?
Yes. The bottom line is we need to also keep an eye on the committed one.
Yeah, because
and not just rely on the one that we've nominated, is what I'm getting at.
Exactly. Yeah, that's absolutely spot on, and that's a very good point, because I'll get back to Kestrel. I can share you. So just to re-emphasize that point, some others may have missed it. So if I'm logging in as a supplier here, process that supplier would have undertaken, come back to line. Internet connection seems to have decided to. I'll try this one. Right, so that's better. So if I just walk through that process again, as a supplier, I would have downloaded the plan, I would have uploaded the plan, and I would have nominated a plan. The MCC then reviews and digests that plan and applies leveling if necessary and correct. Alex, once the supplier gets that committed schedule back, that is what the MCC has then fed back to that supplier as this plan here, which is why we made it purple. And this is column P, which is the approved submission volume. So even though the supplier has said, I wish to migrate this, but we may have applied leveling, and that clearly is indicated by the difference in column Q. For the words down, and this is the volume that will be tracking in the plan versus actual submissions for suppliers as part of the governance element. Okay. Spot on. Good question. Anybody else got any more questions? Right. So now we understand what's in the baseline schedule. That baseline schedule, if I just click over to another party, for instance, a LDSO, I've got an LDSO here, and as an LDSO, I'm interested in what have suppliers submitted in my region that are the total net plans that I'm expecting to see. Rowan was kind enough to ship those out to LDSOs directly via email as for the submission to exercise. However, we probably do agree that's probably suboptimal. And now what we're looking to do is disseminate those baseline LDSO aggregates via Kestrel. So as an LDSO, I would log in to Kestrel and I would see, rather than that planning detail section, I'll just see this execute phase section. And it's saying for the sprint 0 execute phase, here are all the reports. And the first report that I see is the baseline committed. So that tells me for the current sprint, what's the committed volumes. And also for the remainder, what's the forecast volumes. And furthermore, we've added in the present height, the national aggregates. So if I was to download this plan, I will see this particular LDSO's committed plan for that based on the suppliers who committed, and that would be at a daily level. And then the forecast one, I download that and I view that, and that would be at a weekly level. And if I wanted to see the sum of all migrations across all LDSOs, which is we've made available on a collaboration base, we've also made that available here to work on different levels of granularity. And then later on, again, because I'm in the LDSO view, the LDSO then has a LDSO aggregate of this is the plan that I've been told that's the committed portion. It's only committed portion that we do the actuals against. We then show what the outturn is in aggregate for that LDSO. And we're building those reports now. I'll go back to the supplier. I'll see a similar perspective. And this will be the reports that the supplier is eligible to see for their levels of granularity. So as a supplier, we don't show that top level because we already show the baseline committed here. We do show the national aggregates, just to, as we said, we would share them. But the key ones as a supplier I'm interested in, for my given supplier, broken down by LDSO, not so national aggregates, but we actually have by supplier report 0, 2, and 3, what their submission volumes are. So from a supplier's perspective, when I was building the specification by example, what we're expecting for on that plan versus actual outturn, and obviously the other reports will be aggregates of this one. So we have a header indicating that this is the report, that's the MPID, supplier role, it's a daily frequency, it's a plan versus actual, and that's the report date. The header indicates this, what's the main metadata information for this report. So again, it's repeating a little bit of that, but that's the DIP ID for the avoidance of date. the planned migration date that this report is migration date that this report is based on. From the supplier submission, they told us that for the planned submission volume is 200. Notionally, this one, I can move that one, what does make sense. The planned submission volume is 200. And so the day week is, so it's a Wednesday, so that's the first day. And it's during industry ramp up, so it's a piece of information that's during the fast feedback window. Then the next thing is a summary of what's in the report. So we know that for LDSO H, for that day, we're seeing that the baseline proof volume for that LDSO, rather than being 200 and some, is now 110 just for that region. And we saw 110 meter service appointments and 110 data service appointments, and then we saw effectively 90 in that LDSO, which matches those planned volumes. So in this scenario, there's no dropouts on any of these. Well, not well. This supplier was actually able to meet what their planned volume is across all LDSOs to meet the total planned submission count. Then the next element is the breakdown of what does that look like across all the messages. So for a supplier group NPID for the given supplier NPID, because some sender NPID, so some suppliers may have other NPIDs in the portfolio that are qualified that they're undertaking migrations for. So this is to cover that scenario for those of you that have more than one NPID in your full portfolio that's consolidated and qualified and undertaking migration. So we're just capturing that edge case here with these. But for this example, what we can see here, there's the meter service appointments and data service appointments across all message types with 31 sent, 32 accept reject, 33 sent, and then the service providers acceptance or rejections, and then finally once the active the end of day process has taken place, whether the supplier gets notified of at the end of that chain, and this is really from what the supplier sees at the end of the chain, is accept, reject, or lapsed appointments. And that's where you'd actually track that. And then the bit that I'd like to point out here is that we're also showing that we see the transaction date and the proposed appointment date. And this allows us to then validate that, you know, unless it's a fast feedback, that is a plus 5 days from the initiation date. Is that Patricia?
Apologies, I'm not following this. So I've sent 100 if31s. I don't understand how I could have a if32 accept 100 and if32 reject 100.
I know that's a deliberate mistake.
All right, that's fine. So it would just say 100 if31 sent, and it would be either 10 if32s rejected and 90 accepted.
Right.
Right, brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah, I wish I did that deliberately to see if people are paying attention, but it was my mistake. Dom.
Hi, would this file have every migration day within one sprint in it? And also, like, how often would it update within that sprint?
It's daily.
Daily. Okay, great.
It's shipped daily. So the whole purpose is obviously, I think we'll be a day late and $1 short. No pun intended. If we were to give you this in an aggregate and weekly level, so we would like, you know, more participants to have is the data available. We're working hard to make sure that we're able to process and ship this data out probably by, we're trying to figure out the best cut-off time to produce this. It probably shortly because the cutoff is 12 o'clock. So maybe around about 2 o'clock, between sort of 2 and 5 o'clock, that we'll be able to ship this report out.
That's great. So as the sprint progresses, this file will get bigger and bigger and bigger as it gets more days. But then the past days will update as well as the present days, kind of thing.
So this file is static as a one and done, so it gets shipped on a given day. So this reporting day will be shipped on this day, the 22nd of October.
Okay.
And this will be all the transactions for that date with all the different, proposed appointment dates, etc. And we probably may have a cost migration cost change of supply. At the moment, this one's just showing migration change of agent scenario. But you're right. Just if I just flick back to here, you see the reports. So the reports here are for given day. So you would see all reports for this is 4th of August, then there'll be 5th of August and so on. And this would then become your long list of reports per day.
But if for a previous day we get a flow in late, does that get reflected in any report?
Yes, it will be picked up. So you're saying if you miss the cutoff, or there's a late flow on a point and then it comes in the next day, I think we were talking internally about whether we have a late submissions report or something to capture those independently. Because what we're trying to do
even
is
just
make
like
sure
a sprint roundup or something, or some way of seeing sort of at the end of the day what was the sort of final flow position.
Yeah, so the final flow you're talking about on the 35s, or you're talking about the 36s?
Just any of them. So, for example, if that missing if 32 crept in, but 3 days later or something, or indeed if we got all those if 35s in.
Cool. Yes. So we have to think about how do we manage the flow on these. Well, this is kind of at a macro level, so what the flow is. Obviously, really great ideas. And this is what we're trying to work out. Not to try and make this too complicated, so it makes sense, but also balancing out has it got the right information. So it'd probably be worth sitting down with you how we can best articulate that in a report to show that whether it's a late run report or it's a roundup report. Then what works best?
Okay.
Understood. Thank you. Is that Patricia? Hi.
Yeah, sorry, Alf. What time did you say that the report would be produced?
So cutoff is 12, so we're going to need at least a couple of hours. I think we'd probably give it an hour post 12 for any mop up, and then we'd probably initiate the process to cut the data post 1 o'clock. So we produced between 1 and 5 o'clock. So we'd probably seek to have it available in the portal by 5 o'clock.
So the report will be produced at 5 o'clock, but the cut-off for the messages will be
Midday.
1 o'clock?
12 o'clock.
12 o'clock, okay. Why do we just go up to a 35 and why don't we include a 36?
The 36 doesn't appear till D-1. So it won't appear till 28th. So there'll be a separate.
So it adds to it.
So no, this won't be on this report. It's a different report, which we're building, which is effectively the focus of that report is to compare 35s to 36s. So these are 35s with proposed appointment date this, and on D-1 on the 28th we'll produce a 35 completion report. So how many of those 35s on the 28th that we were expecting to see got completed?
Okay, thank you.
And I think that is sort of a high level view of the dipped actuals report. So firstly focusing on 31s to 35, and then as Patricia pointed out, which I haven't got a spec by example yet, of the 35 35s on the actual gate closure at D-1, what actually happened on D-1. And I think that's more probably aligned to what I think Alex is thinking is the roundup report. Because I think by then we would have the final fate or the most latest fate of those 35s in play on that report. But this is kind of supposed the interim view. And then we would all, as we said, we'd have a more detailed transaction summary, I think, which is all building out, which would look at all the F-31s by the different scenarios and so on. I saw another hand go up.
Yeah, Alphys, Alex. Yeah.
Hi.
If they, I'm just trying to get this right in my head. So, presumably, when whatever algorithm that you've got or sort of mining tool that's kind of tracking all of this information that's going across the network, presumably that's going by MPAN level, not just volume in.
Yeah,
And
correct.
that's generated. So I was just trying to get my head around this. So if the cutoff is at 12 p.m., so then basically take the afternoon to extract the data, report the data, etc., and then issue that out by 5 p.m. So really, the 24-hour period is reporting midday to midday, really, isn't it? Yeah. Because when we all come into work, say on the following morning, so let's say we all start at 8:30, whatever. So any flows kicked out between 8:30 and 12 will be reported on that
It's
day.
not quite the same because remember
no?
in the migration, it's not quite that because from the migration framework, what we're governing is initiations on given day D. So and this is to protect central services capacity, and the submission window opens between 5 o'clock in the morning and 12 o'clock midday. So that's what we're policing.
Okay.
So it's that submission window.
Yeah, fine. Okay.
When I say policing, air traffic control, whichever metaphor we use.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So obviously then down to us, then we can kind of set various automation in place to, kind of go out the door before we arrive in the office type thing.
Yes, absolutely. Neil.
I think that work. I mean, it works for the 31s because we've got this defined window. But I'm just looking at migration working group from last month, and 35s could come up anytime up to 11 o'clock. So I think there's at night. So I'll just put it in the chat. If that's still your thinking,
so
we're going to have to be quite careful about the reconciliation.
So these are the late runners. So these are the ones that, if we're producing, so we could produce the report at 11 o'clock and wait for those. So, and the thing is, I think this is the challenge. What was the activity that we're seeing? Right. Obviously, yeah. So you're right. At 11 o'clock, that's the latest.
My concern, Alf, is if we get part of a day, then it becomes quite difficult to reconcile.
Okay. So the
we
option
have to be quite precise about the timings.
Yeah. So you would rather have an end of day view rather than an interim view?
I think so, because then you'd have a timing problem of when did that come out the dip? Because I'm two messages short, for example. I'd have to sort of continuously check that. Whereas if it was an end of day, you would actually know where you stood.
So the end of day logically would probably be better off running that almost between, I know, overnight, early hours in the morning.
Yeah.
So it's available for people logging on first. Again, it's just understanding how suppliers are operating. Are you literally, would you be wishing to look at the reports that 5 o'clock in the morning, or you're happy to look at them 9 o'clock? I mean,
Look at them first thing, I think, wherever where that is. But I think there is a danger in doing halfway through the day, because then there's always a reconciliation activity.
Yeah, I agree. But again, this is something we were debating internally, so it's good to have that feedback. So I think for dress rehearsal it's probably okay because it's synthetic, because we're not going to get that reconciliation problem. But when for production, it does absolutely make sense, because then it's just one report that you have to worry about rather than an interim report and then a final report.
And Alf, if I just chip in, I don't think it's just applicable to the 35s, because the 32s may not come out until 5 o'clock either.
Okay. So we can do that. We're happy to move that report publication to the following day. So this report publication date then becomes the following day.
Yeah, I don't think it's ever meant to be a sort of live report, is it? And you could look at the DIP portal if you wanted something live.
Yeah, but you don't get the aggregate summary, so doing
No.
can interrogate individual messages. Those things, and I think it's one of those things during ELS, and this is the conversation with the ELS participants, it may be useful to have the interim view, especially during ELS. Whereas I suppose later on, when things have stabilised a bit, it's probably it might be yes, it's more about reconciliation.
Yeah, I don't just concerned that suppliers spend a lot of time, well, participants spend a lot of time just reconciling.
Honestly, acknowledge. Thank you. Any more questions?
Oh yeah, so so this is obviously well, it's a detailed high level view, isn't it? But as regards the individual ones, so let's say we're missing 100 messages or something for the day that says that okay, well, you've had actually like 100 rejections, then are there other reports that we would be able to reconcile and check our end along with our own internal stuff, that as far as the program is concerned, right, well, MPAN X, Y, and Z we can see is rejected, or will you be solely relying on us for our own internal reporting to pick out whichever ones have rejected and then address whatever the rejection reason is?
So there is a service provided by the DIP, which is the DIP portal, that allows you to interrogate individual failures on an individual MPAN basis. And then figure out what you need to do with those. But there's nothing from the MCC at an MPAN level that will be issuing reports on. And here we're trying to strike the balance between giving you some detail, but not digging into the MPAN level data. One of the things that I was considering is that I can give the number of these, say this number here, I can do the distinct number of MPANs for these. I was thinking, would that be useful? Because then that should reconcile to the same number, right?
Yeah. So, for example, for that date there, what you mean? We sent 100, 90 accepted, 10 rejected. You mean? Is that what you're talking about, or are you just talking about adding up those two sort of columns there?
No, what I'm talking about here. So, well, I mean, so remember, this is just the gross meter service appointment counts and gross data service appointment counts. And so we say you're planning to do 110 migrations, which is 110 MPANs. So the meter service count, so it should be 1-to-1. So one meter point requires a data service and a meter service appointment. But say, for instance, there's a couple of duplicates in here. That means your distinct number of MPANs for each of these
Might be less.
might be less. So then that gives you like a gross error check that actually there's something could be wrong. So the initiations could be okay, but the distinct number of MPOWs might be off.
Okay.
Just,
For me.
would that be useful as a sort of a reconciliation point?
That makes sense to me. Yeah.
And I think it probably makes sense to almost do it by the meter service and data service count. Because otherwise you're
Yeah.
conflating the two.
Yeah.
I did have it in there, but the problem I have is that obviously the more you put in, the more confusing it can get. So I'm just trying to start off simple so it makes sense, and then you can evolve it. Back to the deck. There's no further questions so far, is there? So just to replay that, so for dress rehearsal 2, what we're going to be doing is primarily making available firstly the baseline schedules, which was the report ones, and that is what we're saying is almost our traceability to make sure that we've got the right level of aggregations in terms of our reporting framework is all working and behaving as expected, and disseminating reports to the right participants at the right level, and they're all able to log in. So that's in reality the week 1 activity that we'll be undertaking. And we know that baseline schedules have already been issued to LDSOs and suppliers have already got them, etc., and national regulators, but now it's just using Kestrel to disseminate them, and that's what that proof point is for. And then we're proving that the capability internally in the Kestrel to generate a committed baseline schedule, which is just for that individual sprint rather than the entire sprint, which is the active portion at daily level. That's going to be visible and downloadable, that daily level view. So all participants knows what's actually been committed by suppliers. And then it's, as discussed, the transaction summary and the outturn reports is the other elements. And that's just a recap of what I was saying, just to re-articulate the point that the committed schedule is what the upcoming sprint period, and it's what suppliers have confirmed and what the MCC is baseline. I don't think there's anything else we need to cover other than the fact that the scripts have been uploaded to the collaboration base, and you're able to peruse those in anticipation of dress rehearsal 2 starting on Monday, and it will commence by the PPC, as I understand it, sending out the URL that we'll be using for dress rehearsal 2 to manage access portal. And we're in the process of finalising the setup of all the accounts for suppliers and other parties, central bodies, etc., who've given us their user registration details. What I would say is if there's any issues with that, we'll be providing as part of that communication how you can then obviously follow up and get support, whether it's user registration or issues accessing Kestrel. Obviously, most of you can see this bit here, which is the health warning. This is a dress rehearsal 2 environment. It's not real data, even though we have based the reports and the schedules on actual real submission 2 data. We try to keep it as close to the submission 2 data as possible, because there's obviously it's less confusing. And what we're doing is simulating all the SIP suppliers as if they've already submitted a committed plan to us. That's the headline.
You got
Just-
Neil and Elaine waiting, so
All
Neil.
right. Thanks, Neil.
I have. If a supplier requests extra ad hoc capacity and is granted it, I assume that becomes the new baseline for that supplier. Is that right?
Spot on.
And that wouldn't affect other suppliers' plans because that's all committed capacity, but it would affect what the LDSOs see, wouldn't it? Because
Correct.
I would have increased my volume potentially.
So what happens in that scenario?
Mm-hmm.
So if I was to walk that through, as you can see here, this supplier has different baseline schedules. So every time, so these are just us conducting refreshes of the baselines of forecast. But what we would actually see is only in reality it's the committed one that would get the baseline, just the committed element. Because we don't need to baseline the whole schedule, it's just the committed element. That then affects the committed baseline schedule aggregates that are then disseminated via Kestrel to all the other parties, and what they will see is another version for this sprint of that commissioned baseline national aggregate and committed baseline LDSO reports. Absolutely correct.
Okay, thank you.
Just for the committed portion, because the others unchanged. The other question was
Elaine Carr.
Yeah, hi Alf. I suppose it's just around you had went into the LDSO side and downloaded one of the files. Is there any chance you could open one of them so that we can have a look and check and see what that looks like?
I thought I
Just
had.
in case we've got any questions.
I do apologise. I thought I'd looked at it, but yeah. So here's an example.
I may have missed it.
No, I may not have done it.
Yeah.
So this one is the committed one. So I'm a LDSO. I did open this up, but Microsoft is not being my friends today. So in Kestrel, we have a concept of a day number. That's the date. The only reason that this is not starting at the beginning is because it's test data. So we only baselined one supplier who started on that date. And that's why it's that variant. The adjusted central services migration threshold is the one that the MCC sets and also applies Kevin, help me, what's the word? I can't remember, my brain stopped. The
Reserve capacity.
Reserve capacity, yeah. And so that's the central services threshold without those reserve capacity applied. So that's, and then that tells us, this is something I have to get the dev team to fix. Is it if it's a migration day or not? So that would be a one on reserve. But you can see, obviously, because there's submissions there, it's about to see if it's a migration day or not. And this is the net volumes for all suppliers. So that's the previous submission. You can see if there's any change in terms of there's the total envelope that we allocated. I think probably this moot point on that one. The supplier, net suppliers plan submission volumes and what the MCC approved. And then we've split it up by the different envelope rules and de minimis rules and small portfolios, so you can get a sense of the different supplier types that was comprised of. But I think I'm probably not going to include that. So that's the daily one, just for the committed. for the committed portion sprint. And then we flick over to the weekly one. So that's
See,
just
before
showing.
you do that, can I just ask
Sure.
why there's not an identifier in there? So if I look at that, I would want to be sure that it's one of my MPIDs that data relates to.
It's in the file name at the top. So you've got IPNL on the top line there.
Yeah.
Right,
So
okay.
I can repeat it. So we can have it as either metadata, or we can have it as a column that's repeated. So we did talk about it. So at the moment we settled on having it in the file name, but
Yeah, we don't want it in there.
it's just as easy to put it in as a column.
I think it would be useful in that way that they should both align and we know that it's 100% our
Your
data. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a problem. To be honest, I did have it down as that, but I talk to evangelical developers who don't like duplication of data. And it's good to get the customer's voice on this one. And here we have this is just the weekly level. So it's almost the same, but the key difference is this is just weekly aggregates for the rest of the period it would look like. I think this is the ones that Rowan sent out to you already. So this will be the remainder of the migration period. It's not the active spread.
Oh, with the committed schedule, so to go back on that, is there any form of indication within Kestrel that would say that that plan is different to the version that we submitted, rather than us having to download it and then sort of cross-reference it to make sure that there are ID any changes?
So you're talking from a supplier's perspective.
Yes, yeah, sorry, yeah.
All right, understood. Yeah. So we just play that back.
I don't know whether that's feasible, whether that could be built in, if there was even just a little one-line
So-
message saying that it is different
Yes.
to what we submitted.
No problem. So in the supplier's baseline schedule, so this is the latest schedule for ZZAA. If I scroll across to here, we can see here there's the supplier's previous plan submission volume.
Yeah.
Look at that. And that's the envelope that we told you that you could straight. That's what this supplier has chosen to migrate for this day.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So basically, his highlight is on there anyway. Right. Okay, that answers
And
my
then
question.
there's what we've baselined, and then we've actually added this column Q, which is the delta, the difference
Okay.
between the two. So obviously, if there's a difference, there would be either it would always be a negative number.
Yeah.
I'm assuming, or whatever, because
Okay.
we'd never add to it. We'd never give the extra. Always
Okay.
take away.
Okay, that's good to know.
Okay. Um.
Got another hand out, Christian.
Hi, Christian.
Hi there. Just follow on to, I think, previous question. So from a supplier's perspective, so the reporting that comes out of Kestrel is kind of stays at the aggregated LDSO level, and then I think you mentioned is via the DIP portal that we get specific MPAN level investigation. Is there going to be any sort of demo into that at all?
I suppose I wasn't sure. There's nobody on from the DIP team, is there, that can help me with that one? Because my understanding is that's something you would have been taken through already. Maybe because you're not at that point yet, you won't have seen it. But
Yeah,
we're
non-sit.
Yes, I think it's
way
part,
through. Okay.
should be part of the onboarding process where you get given access to that, and it's part of that overall service introduction to you, etc., etc. Should be part of
Okay.
that. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. If it happens at a later stage, that makes
Yeah,
sense.
I
Yeah,
mean,
fine.
yeah, I would expect it to.
Cheers.
It would be helpful, also, if even if there was a high level sort of copy of a template that would come out of there, so we can have a view of that beforehand, rather than waiting for an onboarding process and then trying to align any internal reporting requests. We can kind of get ahead of that.
So it's something you should have access during your testing phase.
Okay, what it'll be in.
I think, sorry to interject, I think this has been picked up as part of the transition operational readiness group, if I remember rightly, with regards to DIP portal training. There isn't a date yet, to be honest, but I believe that's going to be picked up as part of that session. It should be coming out of Torwig, I believe.
Thanks, Patricia. Yeah, I was just looking for one of my DIP colleagues to jump in, but yeah, thanks for that support there.
Patricia, did you have a separate point as well? Because you had your hands up prior to
I
that.
was up to just respond to that, because it was a question that was raised at Torwig, because they were talking about obviously the DIP onboarding element of it, but there was then, okay, in connection with the cross-party, so the CPSD document, it references access to portal, so it's being picked up there. That's all I wanted to add. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. I do want to. That's kind of what I assumed that was in train, but I wasn't aware of the specifics. So I think it's something that we could probably just confirm at MWG for anybody who's missed it as well. We're getting
There are no
close,
further hands up, Alf. So,
and there's no questions in the chat. And I think I have covered the main points. So obviously we do thank everyone for their support and attendance today, and this is critical for the MCC to validate the processes. As
sorry,
well
we got
as
we got a late
technology.
hand, Alf, from Mike Sini.
Of course.
Yeah, apologies, and I may have missed it at the start of the meeting. Was there reports for the 36 as well? I saw it as a tab, but I wasn't sure if it was covered. I'd say apologies if I have missed it.
No, you haven't missed it. So there will be a report for the 36, and it will be a 35 to 36 comparison report.
Okay.
And it'll come out at it'll probably be on D actually, because we'd have to wait for the gate closure to complete and then run the report.
Yeah. Okay.
So D being the appointment date.
I'm just thinking from a MDS point of view. So BSC would have visibility of that reporting as well, I'm assuming.
Yeah, so I don't know if you saw, to be honest, we've had requests from Reco, but not BSC specifically. So again, obviously, we just need to put the request into the Kestrel team.
Okay, yeah, cheers.
And one more, Richard French.
I think I know beforehand you said, Alf, you're not ready with the agent sort of reporting of your stuff yet. Have you got an indication of when that might be in a position to be shared?
So that the dependency there is collecting the from suppliers, they're related agents. So therefore we can give you the access. So they need to tell us these are agents that and the market share that they have in each LDSO, and then we need to then overlay that onto the aggregate submissions for those suppliers. So there's a bit of complexity for us, when saying that dependency on that data item, and what we will be focusing on is collecting that information for the SIP suppliers. And I think from our view, it's probably more important to focus on the committed demand rather than forecast demand for the whole of the migration. So that's where we're putting our efforts at the moment. Would that be fair to say, Richard?
And that makes sense, obviously, and we know we're expecting migrations in the first few weeks, but we don't know the detail or the volumes or anything yet.
Yeah,
so
what we're
that will be
seeking to
really
do is-
helpful once you've got that.
Yeah, so I think in September we'll be collecting that information and producing those reports and then making them available. And it will be primarily focused on only SIT agents and SIT suppliers. And then we'll be able to provide those views. Because it's going to be very difficult for us, to look at the forecast because it's almost meaningless because a lot of those contracts probably aren't even in place at the moment. Yep. But
Okay.
yes, it is in plan, and I think September is the candidate when we're looking to get some of those shipped out, or at least the first version.
Thank you.
So we don't have much time.
Oh, I forgot to ask earlier. When is Kestrel going to be back up and running?
Sorry, sir.
When is Kestrel going to be back up and running? It's been
It's
under maintenance the last 2 days, isn't it?
yeah. It says comms went out on Monday, so we've had to undertake some additional data curation and fixing activities for this whole week in preparation for dress rehearsal. So we'll come back online on Monday.
Okay.
And in fact, the Kestrel environment that you're looking for it will be the same URL. There'll be the dress rehearsal environment is what we're expecting. Now, what we've done is we're spinning up a separate environment which has the submission to environment completely backed up into it.
Thanks.
So, may I ask, so is there any particular reason you're looking to access the current Kestrel environment? So,
Well, yeah, no, only because I thought that the example reports were going to be there, but I noticed earlier on in the presentation that it's also said that non-SIT wouldn't be able to access those in any case. Is that right? Is that what I saw correctly on the slides?
so the non-SIT, yes, so for non-SIT at the moment, getting access to those out to input. So what we're seeking to do is publish, those spreadsheets with the specifications in. That's what we're going to share rather than sort of the detailed examples. So we've had a slight delay in getting the finer details of those reports out.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I'm in a webinar.
Hi, there was somebody else had their hand up. I think I know that.
Carry on.
Okay.
Yeah. Are we actually going to go through the test scripts as part of this call?
I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, I think that would be really worthwhile.
Give me a moment. Yeah, unfortunately, I didn't have that open in readiness, so that's my bad. The file I don't have access to, Joe or someone. I don't have my access removed, so then just bring me a link to it. Rowan, do you have the link?
Yep, I'll share it.
And on screen again. One moment. Okay, can everybody see the screen?
Yeah. Yes, thank you.
So these test scripts have been uploaded to the collaboration base, and it's been partitioned into different tabs to align to the different roles that need to be undertaken in the testing. So being an LDSO will probably make sense to start there. I think suppliers are already quite conversant with what they need to do. So the first things first, what we would require you to do is just fill in your organisation details at the top, so we know who's submitting it. The first part is a fairly straightforward element, which is logging in. Can you undertake two-factor authentication, and that verifies that you can set up correctly within the system. And all we're looking for is that did you do it, and it's been done. And then if you have any observations, then within the screen, we actually have some profile data. So for the LDSO, all we're showing is the LDSO counts for your region, and it's just the number that we've gleaned from EES for the current planning cycle. And you just say, okay, you can see that. And then the other thing is just making sure that you can see your contacts. And then we have then you're saying if the execution phase is available. So in the execution phase, I think there's just making sure that this one doesn't count, but LDSO, I think this is just copy and paste. I just need to go through that. So that one doesn't apply. And then we confirmed access to the aggregate forecast schedule. So just making sure we can download that particular forecast schedule as I showed you on the screen. Question to come up. Logging as an LDSO. So the first part is just making sure to log in like this, and the second part is just saying, can you either navigate? So the first part is, can I navigate to my participant role? And can I see the LDSO counts that will be available soon? And can I see the contacts that's been assigned to my LDSO? The other part. The next part, you've got to navigate to the sprint element. So we have concept either the sprint that's in execution or the next sprint that's going to be in planning. So you hit sprint that's in execution, can you see the execute phase reports? And then it's just walking through, can you download each of these individual reports that have been made available?
So the supplier tab, then is going to be only really basic SIT suppliers then if non-SIT can't access these anyway in any case, yeah?
Yeah, so some of us say yes, primarily yes. So I think what we did, the intention was that we were going to try and make it optional for non-SIT suppliers to be able to do some things, but you don't actually need to complete a test script.
Right, okay.
You can have a look, and if we do have time, we might be able to make some of those reports available so you can see them. But you need to focus on SIT things.
Okay.
In summary, and then that's pretty much just going through each of the reports, Kerry, to make sure you can download, see them, and do the next steps. Reports one. I do need to update this slightly. I've noticed a couple of corrections that need to be made, but I'll upload that and we'll get conned out. Okay.
Chris.
Hi, I just wanted to ask a quick question just about that very first step with using incognito mode. Is that something that we have to do, or is that something we can bypass if we aren't able to do that because our organization actually disables incognito mode or private mode?
Correct. It's more of a, when we first commissioned Kestrel, there were some users that had authentication issues with Azure accounts, so it's just as a workaround temporarily.
Okay. All right. Okay, that's fine. Cheers.
As we're saying, the plan start is on Monday, and comms go out from BPC confirming the URL that we're seeking to use. Also said that we do need to just refine some of these test scripts slightly in line with some of the UI that's changed slightly since this was written. And those reports will be, and hopefully you can look at those reports and start to see them coming through. And what we're seeking to do is then build those out 10 reports with simulated data. About quarter of an hour left. I don't think we need to kick the ball open any further. I think it's probably a good point. Just one last chance for any last questions. Okay. Thank you everyone for your time and your support, and speak to you soon. I suppose the only thing that I would cover, so we do have a weekly drop-in session. It will be commed out, so if anybody needs any support with going through the test. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alf.
Cheers.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Thanks.
Uh,
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.